Yeshua dies.
Yes.
And then we're talking about 300 years plus for the Council of Nicaea to show
325.
up. Something like that, right? And that's Constantine. Who decided, hey, we need to grab power because there's too many Christians running around.
Yep.
And it went from throwing the Christians to the lions to now if you're not Christian, you'll get thrown to the lions.
Right. And one of the people who was throwing the Christians to the lions was Paul.
We're going to get to Senor Paul in a minute.
All right, Senor Paul.
Senor Paul in a minute.
Paolo.
Senor Paolo in a minute. So Constantine gets Council of Nicaea, and they bring every story together that's known at the time, and they start to create Christianity as we know it.
Right.
This is, and I'm saying this for people who have not heard this before because it blew my mind when I first heard it. And I'm like, so wait a minute, it was basically by committee. Literally, by committee. So that book's in, that book's out. Ooh, I don't like that reincarnation thing. Let's pull that out.
Right.
What's the Book of Enoch? Yeah, let's not go. Ooh, Mary Magdalene is the wife. We can't have that. Yeah. Let's turn her into a whore.
Yeah.
Because that's what that.
Which is not biblical at all.
Which we have to. We could do that because we can't have women with too much power.
Right, because of Paul.
Right. So then, so when did Paul insert himself? What year?
Well, it's very interesting because Paul's writings are the ones who are. They're not actually scriptures; they're letters.
Right.
But we call them scriptures now.
He's not an apostle.
He's not an apostle.
Can we let everybody know? Paul is not an apostle. Yeah, steal from Peter to pay Paul, that whole thing. Apparently Peter, not a fan.
Peter, not a fan. Well, let's talk about that for a second because you're talking about Rome. You know, in the Gnostic text, it says, the disciples say to Jeshua, who do we go to when you're gone? And in the Gnostic text, Jeshua says, go to my brother James. He doesn't say Peter.
Right.
Never says Peter, right? But what happens is, at the crucifixion, Jeshua goes to the cross knowing he's dying, but he also knows that he has shared a truth, and that if he can spread that truth and people start to believe in that truth, then what will happen is it'll grow, right? So what does he do? He says, Peter, you go to Rome. John, you go to Turkey. James, you stay here. He took the information and he spread it out, got it wide. Well, Peter went to Rome. For Peter to be the first pope of the Christian church, he has to be the next one, the rock upon which we will build this church. So Rome grabbed a hold of Peter and said, he is our first pope, which was a retroactive addition. And they just started moving the seat of power of Christianity to Rome itself, because that's where it was. Now, this all happened much later. Nicaea was the beginning of the doctrines being pulled together. The people who were at Nicaea after Nicaea were the ones who compiled the books. But they got doctrine to start creating a book. They create the Codex Sinaiticus. They create several other Codex Vaticanus and all these various versions. There's multiple versions of the original.
Then we'll talk about King James in a minute.
Yeah, King James. I have a lot to say about him. But but this idea of Nicaea being the one place where they chose the books. It was the one that's where they started choosing books. That's where they started the process of creating a Bible.
Because there was a book by Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
There was a Gospel of Mary Magdalene. There was a Gospel of the book
Gospel
of Enoch.
of Judas.
Yeah, there was a ton of Gospels that just got
pushed out because they didn't match various doctrines. And they didn't match the Abrahamic idea of an external God that we must be subjugated to. Because the Jesuit teachings were not about being subjugated to a God. They were about the power within. And so by starting to codify this into a group. Now, Paul was a very interesting critter, shall we say.
Senor Pablo. Yes.
Pablo. I like Pablo better than Pablo.
Yes.
He never met Jeshua in life.
Right.
He had a vision on the road to Damascus, supposedly. He declared himself to be the apostle to the Gentiles.
Declared himself.
He declared himself to be the apostle to the Gentile. The Gnostic Gospel of James calls him the liar. Literally calls him the liar. And prior to his vision, he was traveling the country as a Pharisee, punishing Christians for being Christian. Right? So this guy didn't have a good track record. One of the things that's said about him in the Gnostic scriptures is that he was kind of like a chameleon. He would change his story for whoever he was talking to.
He was a politician.
Yeah, he was a politician, exactly. He ended up living with Governor Felix, a Roman governor, for many, many years. He was the only one who was the actual Roman citizen. So he was very much tied into Rome and its authority during that time. And then when Rome starts to lean into the teachings and
And what year is this, Paul?
Supposedly he had his vision within a couple years of the crucifixion.
Oh.
But the writings don't come around until 50 to 70 years later.
Right, and they're not incorporated into the doctrine until the 300. So way past Paul's death.
Past Paul. So then we come to now Rome has taken control of the Bible content, right? And we have the 50% of the New Testament is Luke and Paul, right? Luke being number one. Luke never met Joshua in life. Luke was Paul's disciple.
Oh, jeez.
Right? So 50% of the New Testament is all Paul writings. Then there's these letters to Timothy and all that stuff. Timothy was Paul's disciple. So these are letters from Paul to Timothy.
So it's all Paul.
Everything's Paul. The Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, none of them actually had the names Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John attributed to them until much later. All of them were written anonymously. And so,
which we could estimate that it could have been all Paul or Paul.
It could totally have been Paul, but they also scholars agree that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, especially Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are coming from the same source text because they're using the same terminologies, the same things. So they know that they're probably coming from this other text and then breaking them out into these three different doctrines. John being the most esoteric, they're not going to find a lot of correlation with that one, but it also was written anonymously. You know, he never says John. He says that the disciple that Jesus loved is what he's referred to himself. So when you look at the texts that were actually chosen, Matthew, Mark, and Luke lean into the virgin birth, which was nothing Joshua ever said happened. You know,
the whole virgin birth.
The whole virgin birth thing. And then you look at the Bible that the Roman Catholic Church pushes out now. They put out the red letter versions. These are the things that Jesus said, right? And I say, every time I talk religion, I say Jesus as opposed to Joshua, right? Because it's not. I don't think it's the same person.
No,
I think it's very, very different.
It's a caricature.
But what I like about this construct of these red letter versions is that there's huge portions of these red letter versions that supposedly happened when nobody else was around but Joshua. So who wrote it down? Who actually took it and wrote it down? Because Joshua never did, right? When he battled with the devil in for 40 days and nights, that whole story, no one was there except for him and the devil, supposedly, right? So where did these?
So are you saying the devil wrote it? No, I'm joking. He's the only other guy.
We'll get into the devil too, boy. I go down that route because that's actually historically fascinating.
Oh, no, we'll get there.
Anyway.
We will get there.
So the Rome took this whole thing and said, look, we have all these rules, doctrines that subjugate people to our authority, that we have these new ideas that we have this image of the cross, which is really ridiculous that they chose that because the cross was a Roman punishment.
Yes.
So why would they choose that, you know? And then what they did was they just started saying these are what you have to believe. And these have to believes. And the reason I say have to believe is I had a guy one time, and I asked him very specifically this question, very devout Catholic. And I said to him, I said, so can I ask you a question? I said, the books that didn't make it into the Bible, are they just as valid as the ones that did? And he says, no. I said, why not? He says, because I have to believe that God's hand was in the choosing.
But that's ridiculous.
But he has to believe. Who says he has to? The church.
To watch the full video, click on the link below. And don't forget to subscribe.